Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Huddersfield Planning Subcommittee. We'll go straight into the agenda. Item number 1, membership of the subcommittee. Councillor McGuinn, we'll start with you.
No, this is just confirming membership. We've just got apologies, Chair, from Councillor Sokol. I'm not aware of any other apologies.
Do we know what's happening with Andrew?
No.
Okay, item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Moved and second, Paul. Okay then, item number 3, declarations, interest and lobbying. Bernard.
Yeah, I've been lobbied on the page 47, the Play World application on behalf of the applicant. I've given no response. Okay.
Yeah. Donald, anything? No.
I've been lobbied as well, the same as Bernard, by the applicant.
I've received a couple of emails, that's all. Sorry, I did press it first time, it didn't come on. I've received a couple of emails, I think that's all. The second one, I think.
Just lobbying. I've had some information about obviously the Rose and Crown application in Goka. I do know the applicant, so I don't think it's a pecuniary interest. I'm going to step out. I'm not going to be part of the committee, but I would like to sit and listen to the debate and possibly make a contribution as a ward councillor. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, no, nothing for me.
Councillor Hawkins.
Nothing to declare? No.
Lawson.
Nothing to declare.
None, Chair.
Nothing to declare.
Everybody. I have a declaration on the second application, 2022-93158 at Play World. I know the applicants, and I've also made comments to the licensing committee, and I think in the interest of transparency, it's wise that I don't probably participate in that application at all. That's upon seeking legal advice as well. So would it be wise at this stage to propose a chair to complete that final application? Councillor Hawkins.
He did such a grand job last time. Could I propose Councillor Homewood, please?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, second, I think everybody's happy with that, aren't they? Yeah. Good. Item number 4, admission of the public. Yeah, I think that's fine. Item number 5, petitions and deputations.
None received, Chair.
Okay, 6 and 7 were the site visits that we completed today. I can also confirm that I did not attend the second site visit at Play World. Okay then, applications, the planning applications itself. The first application is page 13 at No Road, Golka. Ellie, is that you? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ellie Worth and I am the case officer for this application. This is an outline planning application for 7 dwellings and includes matters relating to access and layout following the partial demolition of the Rose and Crown public house in Golka. The application is brought to committee due to the number of representations received in objection to the application. Here is the location plan and an aerial photo of the site. So this is the Rose and Crown here, and this is its associated car parking there. The site is situated within a conservation area and this building is listed here. To the south east is the Conservative Club, and to the north is the Liberal Club and the Bowling Green. This area here is a designated area of small green space as set out in the Kirklees local plan. Surrounding the site, you've also got residential properties here and along here, and there's also a public footpath which runs down here. Here are some photos of the site. So this first photo is just taken from Knoll Road, Church Street, just looking onto the site. And then this second photo shows the relationship with Golka Conservative Club. This third photo shows the relationship with the properties along Church Street. And this fourth photo is just stood from within the site looking back onto the highway. So this was the listed building that members will have seen on site today. This photo is just taken, so this is the current access into the car park, and these last three photos are just taken within the car park looking at the surrounding built form. So these are the properties on Scape View and they are set at a lower level, and then this final photo you can see the Conservative Club there and the pub itself is just within the background. Here is the proposed site plan. As mentioned, the scheme is to provide 7 units. This would include 4 semi-detached and 3 detached properties. A new access would be created along here, so it would result in part of, well, the public house being demolished with just its frontage being retained to be dwellings 1 and 2. To the front of the site will be a green amenity space, and the bus stop, which has had to be, well, would need to be removed, relocated, will be here. As mentioned, the application is just seeking permission for access and layout, so we have no elevations or no floor plans at this stage. In terms of the principle of development, this can be accepted by officers as the loss of the community facility has been justified under policy LP 48 of the Kirklees local plan. The development is slightly below the required density at 35 dwellings per hectare, but this is due to the constraints on site, including the relocation of the access, having to retain part of the public house. In terms of, and also just to achieve acceptable separation distances to both the Conservative Club and residential properties. Therefore, officers can accept 7 dwellings on this brownfield site. In terms of visual amenity, as mentioned, only layout is to be considered. Officers believe the retention and conversion of the public house into 2 dwellings to be acceptable, with the remaining development to be set behind. There would be some harm to the setting of the conservation area and listed building, but officers consider this to be mitigated by the public benefits proposed, which would be the provision of housing within a sustainable location within Golka. Materials, whilst a reserved matter, are likely to be traditional in respect of the area. In terms of residential amenity, acceptable separation distances are proposed to third-party units, and if approved, careful consideration would need to be given to the dwelling scale and appearance. In order to protect existing commercial uses and future residents, environmental health officers have requested a noise report to be submitted as part of any future reserve matters application. In terms of highways, significant amendments have been sought with consultations taking place with KC Highways DM and the Section 38 team. This has resulted in an acceptable road layout being achieved to include appropriate sight lines and on-site parking. The road as proposed is to an adoptable standard also. The bus stop, as mentioned, would be relocated, and we are looking to achieve a 2-metre wide footpath along the front of the site, which can be conditioned in the case of an approval. In terms of waste management, swept paths have been demonstrated as shown on screen to show that a refuse vehicle can enter the site and manoeuvre safely in order to enter the highway into forward gear. This is supported by KC Waste Strategy. Lastly, as mentioned, 39 representations have been received, but officers feel that the concerns raised have been overcome and responded to as part of the amended plans and within the committee report. As such, officers are recommending approval for the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellie. Councillor Marchington, will you be speaking on this application or on this item or not? Yeah, we'll take Andrew first, I think. Yeah, we'll go with you first then.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the officer's presentation. Obviously, if you've been on the site visit this morning, you'll know that actually most of this part of Gokra is a constrained site and access to and from is an issue. I think there's two things that we appreciate is the checking of the highways amendments on it to make sure that it is actually safe to get in and off site. And of course, because of the nature of the Rose and Crown previously, it's probably at time, actually the traffic movements from the development will probably be lower than they would have been from the pub and the club at a time. So I think as much has been done as possible. The bus stop, I think we really appreciate that being moved. That has been hit a number of times in the last 3 or 4 years. So perhaps relocating it and ensuring it's a bit further away from the carriageway will be a benefit as well. I think the other thing is, and I appreciate what the officer said about the density of the site. It's not as highly, it won't be as the usage won't be as dense as it might be, but I think that is perfectly appropriate given the access to and from the site. So we appreciate that. And again, appreciate the applicant having reduced it from the 14 to the 7. I think that is appropriate. It does make that. The last comment again is about keeping the frontage of the pub. It was a nice pub. It was used. It got meeting space and everything. But actually, in terms of the visual impact of the area, retaining the frontage, we'll do as much as possible to maintain the visual meaning and character of it. Although we recognise that there is a loss of that. So I hope you will take those comments into consideration when you're making your decision. I mean, a lot of them have already been taken into consideration in the report that's presented before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marchington. The next speaker, Emma Hanks, the agent. 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, committee members. We were approached by our client, Mr Pogson, to look at the redevelopment of the Rose and Crown pub site and to look at its feasibility for the change of use to a small residential development after the viability of the pub to continue trading was sadly not possible following the pandemic. The site is centrally located within the popular village of Golka and is accessed off Knoll Road, Church Street. The site and its car parking sits within the conservation area of Golka and is positioned next to the Conservative Club, a prominent architectural building and asset within the conservation area. The application seeks outline planning permission for 7 individually designed properties, creating a small development of homes for first-time buyers up to family homes. The site provides 2 two-bedroomed cottages which front the main road. Behind those are 2 3-bedroom semi-detached cottages and a further 3 4-bedroomed properties. All of the dwellings provide ample parking space, generous amenity and garden spaces, and also visitor parking. As you will see on the site plan, the entrance to the development has been proposed further northwest from its current position, and this was done to help with visibility coming in and out of the site, as currently the sight lines are below standard and not acceptable to the southeast, adjacent to the Conservative Club. This new position has been fully supported by highways. The bus stop has also been located further southeast and a public open space provided with seating area to the side and behind the new bus stop. Walls and soft planting are proposed to enhance the frontage of the site, and stone walls have been proposed to form the boundaries around plots 1 and 2, following the conversations about design with the planning officers. The relationship of buildings and space around the Conservative Club has also been carefully considered as to minimise any harm and softened with further planting to the boundaries that fall next to the Conservative Club. We have worked very closely with Ellie, the planning officer, and the other consultees for this application, and the proposals have developed into the plans we have in front of us today. Albeit this is only an outline application, further proposals would need to be covered within a reserved matters application to clarify the external appearance of the dwellings and other elements. But with careful and sensitive design, we would like to see a sympathetic and in-keeping design approach to be adopted for the final scheme, using local materials and perhaps the reuse of the stone from the original pub, together with architectural details picked up common to the area. I note some queries were raised by the committee members, but Ellie has sufficiently answered these within her report. Thank you for your time, and we hope that the committee can support this scheme and grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the applicant, Mr. Carl Pogson. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Pogson.
Right, well, all I can say is she's come over very, very well in what she said. I only came here today for the simple reason I thought to myself to explain to you that it is progress, what we're doing. Leaving it as it is, it's only going to go down and go worse. It's a pub. And as we all know, the pub business is failing right, left and centre. Ellie's done a very, very good explanation of what's going on around about it. Obviously, there's 1 or 2 people complaining for their own personal reasons. And I just pray to the Lord that He'll pass it for us. Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Pogson. So it's over to the committee then for their comments. No, I think we'll do the committee first. Councillor Hawkins first then, please.
Thank you, Chair, and forgive me for sounding a bit nasally. I'm a bit under the weather at the moment. But thank you, Ellie, for the report, and thank you, Andrew, as well, for your input. It's very useful to get ward members' input into planning applications. It's very, very useful, so thank you for that. I understand the issues around access, but I feel certainly a common sense driving on there should mitigate any issues that you are going to have there. Appreciate they've moved the access as well. If as long as road users appreciate it's Church Street and not Silverstone, I think they'll be absolutely fine there. They've also reduced the number of dwellings. It's all traditional, using local materials in keeping with the design of the area. I'm happy with all the amendments that have been, I say amendments, the negotiations that's gone on between the developer and the planning officer. I think this is exactly the kind of site we need to see developed, and I would like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any other comments, Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. I can't really add that much to Councillor Hawkins' comments, really, and to what we've heard so far from the officer and from Councillor Marchington. On the site visit today, looking around the actual site itself, and particularly the access and egress, the sight lines certainly will be significantly improved with the plans as they are now. Absolutely agree that this is a site that needs developing. The separation distances between the houses and the residential properties already there look appropriate in terms of what we've been told. Clearly, there'll be details of the actual development at a later stage, and we're going to look at that. So for me, it's a very appropriate development and one to be welcomed in this area. So I'd second the recommendation, second the proposal to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So we have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the officer's recommendation. I've just got one point of clarity, please, Ryan, and that's around the movements or the anticipated movements in traffic. We'll go to Ryan first. We'll come back in 1 minute, Tony.
Through you, Chair. Ranking the Highway Development Management. This development is forecast to generate only 3 to 4 vehicular, two-way vehicular movements in the AM and PM peak periods. If you compare that to if it was a public house, you could have 10 to 20 vehicle movements each hour throughout the opening hours. So it's considered to be a significant reduction in that respect. As a result, overall, it's considered the residential development will have a reduced impact in terms of traffic generation overall, as if the site was brought back into a public house. As such, Highways consider that this application is to be an overall improvement in terms of highway safety. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Greaves.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say it's always a sad day to lose a long-standing establishment like the Rose and Crown. I feel it should be mentioned. You know, it's sad that
we never want to see local assets like that disappear. But obviously it's been said that as a business it's not viable, and as mentioned by the applicant, that if it's not working and no one can make it run, it shouldn't sit there forever as a relic to not serve alcohol to people. One thing, there is a festival that goes on up at the Conservative Club, and I hope that with the new dwellings being built, that the residents that move in aren't there to stop that happening as another, so obviously a local asset, having a festival once a year on that ground. But other than that, I'll be supporting it because I can see no good reason why you wouldn't press ahead with that development.
Thank you. Councillor Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it is a pity that the opportunity for this to serve an alternative purpose has been and gone. It's an outline application, and I would probably say my concerns rest more about the impact that development might have in respect of its near neighbours, the Conservative Club, the Liberal Club and the Bowling Club. So I do know that as part of the reserved matters, there's going to be a noise report. And I think that's going to be a really important one. It's not uncommon for people to move into the centre of a busy little area and then start complaining about late night noises and vehicle movements that are going to be tucked in between the Liberal Club, the Bowling Club and the Con Club. I'd just like to make sure that when those reserved matters come forward, that noise report fully reflects that, and that there's appropriate mitigation to make sure that there isn't a string of complaints when people start moving in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greaves. Councillor Richards.
Just to echo Councillor Greaves's comments, I do remember the Rose and Crown. It was a nice pub. Shame it's not going to continue as such. It's just when outline planning permission comes to the committee, with so many reserved matters on, how do we know and can be reassured that all these issues will be dealt with in the detail that is required? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Richards. Ellie, I think we just need some clarity on the reserved matters, the noise report, and there was something about the festival that Councillor McGrath mentioned.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So obviously officers acknowledge that the site is between the Conservative and the Liberal Club, and I guess as outlined in paragraph 182 of the MPPF, it states that planning decisions should ensure that new development can be integrated effectively with existing businesses, and existing businesses should not have unreasonable restrictions placed on them as a result of development being permitted. So that's why we are asking for that noise report, to be able to make sure that those clubs can still operate in a manner whilst protecting, whether it be extra insulation for the houses, etc. But that should be detailed as part of the reserved matters, and that's why we are asking it to be submitted as part of the reserved matters rather than before development commences, etc. So officers are aware of that, and that will be taken into account. Just going on in terms of the reserved matters application, we have set out a list of conditions as part of this permission should it be granted. So, and they do have kind of time frames to when those conditions need to be discharged as such. So if they need to be submitted with the reserved matters, if it's a key element that we do need to bottom out as part of that, then it will be clearly set out. So yeah, that's all I can add on that, unless anyone's got anything else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellie. So we have a mover and a seconder to approve the officer's recommendation. I don't think there are any more comments or contributions. I think we'll go to the vote, Richard.
Okay, thank you. Right, so this is being moved by Councillor Hawkins, seconded by Councillor Davis to delegate approval as outlined in the submitted report. So if I can start with you, Councillor McGuinn.
For.
Councillor Firth. Councillor McGrath. For. Councillor Lee Richards.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Uller.
For.
That's unanimous, so the application has been approved.
Thank you. There'll be a short adjournment until James comes over, I think. That's it. Thank you.
Down, please. Ready to go.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Cool.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's carry on then. So on to agenda item 9. Plan an application to vary conditions on a previous permission for change of use of a retail unit into an indoor sports and recreation unit on Westbourne Road, Huddersfield. Over to William.
Thank you, Chair. My name's William Stemcorker and I am the case officer for this application. This concerns the former home care DIY building, now known as Playworld, which is off Westbourne Road, Marsh. It has been in use for several years as a mixed-use sport and recreational centre. And it contains a children's play gym and a skating rink, which is also for use by adults. This shows the setting of it. It has quite a large private car park. Below here is Westbourne Road, and this is a pub. And to the north of the site, along Syringa Street, it's all residential. The proposal now when being considered is variation of condition 5 on the original 2013 permission to vary the opening hours. 9 p.m. was the original closing time specified by the relevant condition. And the application is now that this be amended so that it can open until 11:15 p.m. 5 days of the week, and until midnight Saturdays and Sundays. A number of representations have been submitted, 13 in all, details in the report. Now, last year, an unsuccessful application was made for the use of some outside land associated with the premises here, just out of view, as an external customer seating area. This was refused, and it is completely unrelated to the present application. And granting permission for the variation hours at this stage would not grant or imply permission to use any part of the premises as an outdoor customer seating or service area. Now, to return to the current application, officers did have concerns about it. Not so much because of the possibility of noise emanating from the premises, such as amplified music. This has occasionally given rise to complaints to environmental health in the past, but it has been mitigated successfully by upgrading an external door. What is still a potentially remaining concern is noise resulting from people leaving the premises at or near to closing time, and this could arise from car doors being slammed, car engines revving, and this could include also taxis coming to pick people up as well as private cars. And some of this noise could be audible from outside the site and at the boundaries of residential properties. Now, in response to these concerns, the applicant submitted a noise management plan, and full details of this are in paragraph 1014 of my report. And this, in the officer's view, if it is adhered to and implemented correctly, should ensure that noise from customers leaving the premises does not occur at a level to cause nuisance or loss of amenity. There is inevitably some uncertainty about this, and since it depends on customer behaviour, it depends upon how successful staff are at ensuring compliance. And with this in mind, officers recommend that in the first instance a 6-month temporary variation should be granted. And in that time, the use will be allowed to function with the extended hours. At the end of that time, the applicant will be able to apply for a longer term or permanent permission, and the officer's assessment of that will depend upon whether it has given rise to complaints during the time it has been operational. A premises licence was granted, and that is an amended varied premises licence in August 2022, which did allow longer hours than the initial planning permission, longer than 9 p.m. that is, and it would allow some activities to carry on as late as 11:45. And the licensing regime is, of course, a separate regime of control, and therefore the council, acting as local planning authority, is not bound by it, but is allowed to form an independent view. So, as officers, we do not think this application raises any other concerns besides noise and, for example, car parking access. The officer's recommendation is to grant a 6-month temporary variation in hours in the first instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've got 2 speakers. First is Malcolm Sizer. You've got 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Malcolm Sizer. I'm a Chartered Town Planner acting on behalf of the applicant. On the 3rd of August, the application relates to the building and not to the relatively recently opened and refused outdoor seating and play area. On the 3rd of August 2022, the Council's licensing panel considered a request to vary the opening hours in respect of the activities in the building itself, i.e. directly relevant to this planning application. The panel agreed that licensable activities could be carried out until 11:45 p.m. on any night of the week. The planning application now before you does not seek such extended hours on Mondays to Thursdays. It only seeks that the premises are open to customers on those days until 11:15. It is only in respect of Fridays and Saturdays that we are seeking an extra 3/4 of an hour beyond the required finishing time of licensable activities for customers to wind down and leave. One of the licensing objectives as set out in the report to the licensing panel is prevention of public nuisance. Isn't that effectively the same as protecting residential amenity, which was the reason for imposing the planning condition in the first place? If so, is there any logic in your officers recommending the approval of only a 6-month variation of the requested hours and not a permanent variation? Your officer's report makes clear that planning permissions should assume that separate regulatory regimes will operate effectively. In other words, if there is a public nuisance, then planning should assume that licensing officers will take the appropriate action. We are asking that the decision on this application should take full account of the licensing panel's decision and allow a little more time on 2 days a week for drinking and eating up and winding down. During consideration of the planning application, a noise management plan was requested by the Environmental Health Officer. That which I have submitted is considered acceptable by the officer, who recommends that the proposal can be approved. Furthermore, and I quote from paragraph 1015 of the officer's report, planning officer's observations are that the noise management plan contains a suitable level of detail, and it appears likely to achieve its aim of preventing late night noise from causing disturbance to residential properties in the vicinity. On that basis, why can't a permanent permission be granted for what has been happening for the last 9 years? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker is Raj Handa. Again, you've got 3 minutes to speak when you're ready.
Okay, my name is Raj Handa, founder of Playworld and local businessman. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone's time today. Playworld's been established since 2014. We took over the unused building, which had been empty for over 5 years, situated in the middle of Marsh. Having spent over £500,000 bringing the large building back into use, we have a very successful business, currently employing over 30 members of staff. We are heavily involved in local charities and have good working relationships with local schools, nurseries and colleges. Playworld is the only indoor roller skating venue in Huddersfield, offering soft play and in-house restaurant, toddler activities, parties and education events. Since we opened, Playworld, it's been voted #1 family destination in Huddersfield. We have visitors from neighbouring boroughs, including Wakefield, Halifax, Leeds, Brighouse, and even Manchester. Playworld has put Huddersfield back on the map for family destinations. Since we opened in 2014, we have been operating unknowingly outside the permitted hours of the planning permission. This was and has been a major oversight from our teams at Playworld, the planning officers at Kirklees and the planning consultants. We assumed for these 9 years that we had full lawful permission to operate on our licensed permitted hours. We are asking for a variation of hours to be permanent variation on the conditions given in 2014 and not a temporary licence. Our business is massively affected due to COVID-19 and other overall high-rise costs. Our customers have been changing their spending habits. Sorry, I just lost that. We need to do everything what we can possible to keep the doors open at Playworld. A temporary licence does not work for our type of business. We are a business who take advanced bookings throughout the year and some at least 1 year ahead worth of bookings. We host adult skating nights, adult skating club nights, student nights, birthdays and other celebrations. Giving us a temporary licence, we will not be able to book any events until we clearly know if we're allowed to be open after 9 p.m. This will have a major impact on our business, and even after a successful trial for 6 months, going through the whole planning permission can take months and causes major stress and can be a very costly process. Having a temporary licence will have a massive impact for our business, and we could face closure without these events and nights. We fully depend on the income and sales these events bring to our business. I'm requesting your sincerely understanding. We would have totally understand if this was a new ask for hours to be varied or changed. We have been operating these hours since day one without any issues or enforcements from Kirklees. No trouble or issues with the police, highways or enforcement officers. We have worked well with environmental health in earlier days to work in partnership regarding setting of our music and bass levels. Can I continue?
You've had your time now, thanks.
Okay, sorry.
We've got the gist of what you're saying, thank you.
All right, thank you
very much. Right, members. Councillor McGuinn.
Yeah, I actually live on Syringa Street, where just down the road from where Playworld is. And since it's been opened, there's been very few issues with noise or only problem probably have with parking, but they do have a massive car park. It's just some people choose not to use a car park, and that's not their fault. I've had to park my car not outside my house, somewhere else because someone's parked there. Well, these are the things that are sent to test us. So as regards the hours, I'm a bit, because I've been operating these hours and I've hardly noticed any problems. I am minded to support the applicant in this application, and but I want to hear what other members think. So before I make a proposal, I won't make a proposal. I'll wait to see what other people think, but I can't see any reason to refuse it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGuinn. Councillor Marchington, you're next.
Thank you, Councillor Homewood. Yeah, I think some of us were involved with the licensing application, so we've heard some of the details before about the background to this. I think the question, when we've looked at temporary notices before, is the process of converting that from 6 months into a permanent. And I understand, you know, when you're operating a business that's working over a longer period of time, I'd like to know how smooth that would be. And I think at the very least, I think I'd be minded to say, could we have a longer temporary notice so you've got at least assurance for the next 12 months, and then I'd want some assurances, given that there's been very few complaints about this, actually, whether we are minded to say whether we make that permanent at the moment. I know elsewhere when we've talked about temporary stuff, it's about the length of time on that. I certainly think it should be at least a longer temporary, or if possible, you know, listening as Councillor McGinn says, listening to debate whether we'd be minded to move it to prove a permanent straight away.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, William, for the report. Thank you for the applicant speaker as well. I understand noise being the main sort of concern, but the mitigating plan that's been put together is very appreciated. But I think more importantly as well, but Playworld is in spitting distance of the Croppers Arms and Westbourne Road, which is very busy with takeaways and other sort of late night establishments as well. So I don't see, particularly if it's being operated into late night anyway, how this will greatly increase sort of noise disruption in the area. And I think there's a bit of a consensus forming here, but again, similar to Councillor McGuinn, I'm going to reserve the right to sort of make a decision, but I am minded to move for a permanent approval on this and not the 6 months that's been proposed by officers. But again, I will see whether that becomes a majority consensus as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Davies.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Yeah, question for officers really on the hours. Could you run through again what hours are currently being operated by on this premises, and again to take us through the rationale as to why the 6 months is being proposed. So what are they operating at the moment? Why the proposal of 6 months, and also if we've got any view about level of complaints as well, would be useful, because I think that clearly seems to be the key issues that we're talking about at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just bring in Councillor Lawson and Councillor McGrath, and then we'll come back for some comments like that. So, Councillor Lawson, you first.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if anybody actually could tell me what the capacity for the building was, as in like how many guests that they would actually have of, say, an evening when they'd done the parties, etc.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, I'll talk into this, right? I'm wondering, as a question to the officers, similar to Councillor Davis, in terms of the hours. Now, the 6 month, I'd imagine the 6 month sort of probation period, if you will, for the extended hours is 6 months. Had this application, in terms of planning, been in line with the licensing and stuck with the same hours, would there have been a similar probation suggested, or would it likely have been a more permanent one, would be my question, because I think it could set a dangerous precedent if we say, well, I've been operating at this anyway, we should have the license for it. That worries me, because that almost incentivizes people to break their own license to come back and say, I've got evidence that I've been doing it anyway and you didn't notice. That being said, I would, as far as I can see, and I know the area, and I know that the place, I've parked in their massive car park a couple of times without anyone noticing, so I'm for it, but I do wonder in terms of the officers how the 6 month idea comes into place, and also what sort of cost and time effort it takes both for the applicant and yourselves. What is the cost to us all for you to have to go through a second process of applying for this after 6 months?
Thanks, Councillor. So, yeah, William, if you could come back on those points. I mean, just to add my thoughts in, I think it sounds like from the members that they're overall supportive of the application. It's a question of the 6 months versus permanent. And I think the other thing just to add to me would be helpful, I know you kind of covered it earlier around the differences between the planning and licensing, but I would have, in my mind, I would have thought if there's an issue in terms of noise, public nuisance, etc., that would more likely to be through a licensing review rather than a planning review. So it would be just good to understand how those two things work together. So either William or Teresa, whoever is the right person.
Through you, Chair, we do have two members of our environmental health team here today to answer questions well. So if there's any questions that they can answer on that point, they are here.
Thank you. Do you want to go first, William, and then anything to hand off? You can do.
Yes, through you, Chair. To return to the questions that Councillor Davies raised, the present hours permitted by the terms of the planning permission are 9 p.m. The premises licence, as I understand it, allowed somewhat longer hours than that. Now we have, I understand that according to the applicants, it has been operating at hours going considerably beyond the planning permission hours, beyond 9 p.m. for some years, but we as officers haven't verified that one way or the other, and we have not placed any substantial weight on this factor. Our starting point is what are the hours permitted under the planning permission. And now to return on the question of the rationale for a 6-month period, the 6 months will be over the summer, and at that time the residential properties in the vicinity of the site may potentially be more sensitive to noise because people are likely to have the windows open more of the time, or people spending more time in the garden. So it would be a good opportunity to test the extended hours and see whether they're likely to give rise to problems, to complaints. And as for the nature of any complaints that have been received so far, again, the environmental health officers may wish to offer further comments and insights on that.
Thank you. Could we bring in environmental?
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, Mark Chapman, Environmental Health. Just in relation to the comment about in relation to planning, current planning hours and licensing hours, it is commonplace that licensing will grant a premises licence with extended hours that contradict planning, and for that reason I don't know why, but that's what they do. They're not allowed to restrict that, so it's just an anomaly that they do that. And it's the case with Playworld, and we do know that Playworld have been operating outside the planning hours and have done successfully without causing any noise on occasion, but we have had 3 complaints last year. We did visit and we did set up, they have a noise limited, control noise limits inside that we're breaking out, and we have done that. We've done that on a number of occasions working with them. Just going back to the hours of use, Playworld don't the late events that they have hosted aren't necessarily weekly or monthly. There's kind of ad hoc. So what we're looking at here is intensification of use at more sensitive times of day. So having said that, it doesn't mean that they can't control the noise, but we do have concerns in relation to one aspect, which is the fire door, the fire escape door route on the south facade, which used to be a solid heavy-duty dense fire door, well fitted, and it was replaced last summer with a single glazed aluminium door, which is yet to be replaced. That is still in position, and it was my advice to them was to replace that with the previous door or of a similar grade, because that is a weak point for noise breakout from amplified sound of the premises. So I would, answering the question, we've had 3 complaints last year. We didn't witness the noise, we didn't substantiate it. However, when we did do a trial, we did have noise breakout, and we did, with the applicant, we did adjust levels to ensure it wasn't audible in noise-sensitive properties. So, due to the intensification, I would recommend a 6-month over the summer period, more sensitive time of year, see how that works out with a view to extending that and putting a further application. Does that answer the questions?
It does. I'll bring. Can I just clarify one point you just made there? In terms of the application, can what you environmental health has said around the door requirements, is that able to be a condition on the if the committee wanted to?
Through you, Chair, we could add it as an additional condition within a specific timescale, say within 1 month, planning permission if it's granted. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks. You've already asked one point I was going to raise on that. I think certainly now hearing from our environmental colleagues in terms of the intensification of the activity, for me, I'm certainly leaning towards officer's recommendation in terms of the 6-month trial. I think on that basis, it does seem that there is a difference, or potentially a difference in terms of the activity from what you said. So certainly for me, the 6 months does seem a sensible approach, and certainly isn't penalising the business in that sense. So that's I'm certainly starting to lean that way from what I've heard so far.
Councillor Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. Planning and licensing serve different purposes and they're clearly different regimes. It does seem strange that licensing issue hours of operation that are outside planning, but it's up to the applicant to make sure that they're actually complying with both sets of obligations. What we're being asked is to extend from 9 p.m. to 11:15 and 12:30. I don't think that's unreasonable to put that onto a temporary consent. If the applicants comply with the conditions and operate accordingly, I don't see an issue with that becoming permanent. So I'm quite comfortable to move officer recommendations, subject to the addition of the condition of improving that emergency exit door.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, can I just check on the dates at the on the top of this planning application? So it says date valid 26th September 2022, target date November 2022, extension expiry date 1st of December 2022. How long, so for example, they hit all the criteria after 6 months, at what point did they have to apply to have it as a permanent one, and can it be done continuing from the 6 months being successful? Can it run then continuously from then, or could it be months at a time to go to another committee such as this and they'll be left with, say, 3 months of no man's land, not knowing whether they can continue to the 12:30?
Yeah, Teresa, would you like to answer that?
Through you, Chair, it would be usual for an applicant to apply to extend the hours before the expiration of the 6-month period, say if the 6-month period was what was granted. If there hadn't been complaints and there weren't other issues arising from the temporary operation of it, we would be looking to verify that those additional hours are acceptable if no other material planning considerations come about in that time. So part of it is how the trial period actually operates through there. If an application is in, then we would have to consider how we would assess whether it would be expedient to take any kind of action if the extended hours were operating beyond the original 6-month period, if we had another planning application that we were assessing at that time.
So just to clarify, can I confirm that, so the date valid, the 26th of September 2022, was that when you received the original?
If they are granted planning permission today,
Yep.
if it's on the conditions that are set out in the report to members, the 6-month period would start on the date the planning permission is issued. So say if we issue it at the beginning of next week, the 6 months would start from...
Sorry, yeah, it was more just on the basis of that date valid date, because that's 6 months ago now. If you, I don't know what the date valid is. If that's not that, so my point would be, should they now apply for a permanent licence today for the 6 months from now?
No, the date valid is the date the application was submitted.
Yes, so that's 6 months ago, right? September. Well,
yes.
Yep.
So the actual permission granted, the date of a planning permission is the date that planning permission is issued. So we haven't issued any decision on this application.
No.
6 months will commence.
Can we just clarify? I think I understand what's being asked here is that we're suggesting a 6 months from, say, tomorrow or whenever it would be. Clearly, they don't want to operate without having the correct planning permission. So when would they need to essentially apply again to get a full planning permission? Because if it's tomorrow, then it's kind of 6 months doesn't feel like a sensible period, does it? Because then you're then judging the new application based on no information and no further information.
Exactly that.
Sorry, who was going to come in? Julia?
Yes, through you, Chair, thank you. Yes, so I think what you're getting at there is in terms of the time it's taken to determine this application.
Exactly that, yes.
And you're saying, well, should you put in a new
Now, yeah, if it's the same period of time.
What I would say is no. Like say, as long as you've submitted that full application for the permanent sort of new hours after we've had this trial period. So I'd probably say about good couple of months before that trial period ends.
Okay.
Make sure that you've made sure you've got your evidence together to confirm that there aren't any issues or anything. Obviously, if there are issues that seem to have occurred during your initial trial period, then you need to look at addressing those during that time prior to any resubmission. But yeah, I wouldn't say you need to be putting it in 6 months in advance. Like I say, with this, it's because there's been matters to sort of resolve during the course of this application.
Okay, could I just I don't know, can I go back on just to double check something?
Quickly go on it.
In terms of hearing about the issues, will you report them live or will you review them after 6 months? Because obviously if at the end of the 6 months you go back and say, these are the issues we've had over those 6 months, then obviously the 2 months before apply would delay that. So will you be submitting any issues that you have going through the 6 months as live data back to the applicant?
Anything to add?
Through you, Chair. So if, for example, it was a statutory nuisance which had been reported to us, then our environmental health colleagues would investigate that accordingly. Chair, am I all right to bring in Mark at this point to explain that situation?
Yeah,
Thank you.
on receipt of any complaints and substantiating any complaints about amplified sound, we'd liaise with the applicant and work with them to allow them to understand why they've had complaints and how to manage it to avoid further complaints, to comply with their the conditions in the planning and the licence, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It would be fed back at actual time, so at the time it happened, we'd be in touch and we'd work closely with them to support them. Just one point though, can I just some confusion about talking about planning permission and licensing, and it seemed to be crossing over. If the permission is granted, whether it be 6 months or 12 months, the applicant needs to be aware that the current licence only allows them, it doesn't allow the same hours, so you have to stop serving alcohol a lot sooner, close and for recorded music and live music. So it's something you need to review to ensure that you're compliant. You don't need to fall foul of the Licensing Act and my licensing colleagues whilst you're in the temporary permission. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I think there was a couple more members who asked to speak. So Councillor Davies, did you have your hand up? No? Was it you?
I have it
There's
up
two
now.
people. Go first, Councillor Hawkins, and then...
I have it up now. Well, basically, I just second Councillor Greaves' proposal.
Okay, Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, obviously there's been two views expressed. One to go with Officer A, make a recommendation at 6 months. There's a number of others that explored whether it should be longer than that or whether it should be permanent. And his question is how we process-wise test both those views. So I know we've had the proposal to go with Officer recommendation, and I would be a bit concerned if that fell, that we then cannot test making it permanent, or I mean, again, what I've heard of the debate, I am minded to say for a longer, probably a longer temporary, because basically it's not a 6 months, it's 4 months, and then they're going to have to apply. And given what Mark said about actually the summer months, I think they should, I would certainly like, if we are minded to be temporary, I would certainly like to see a longer period than 6 months. And of course, again, bearing in mind the needs of the applicant as a business as well. I think again, it's not just about the testing the application; it's about meeting the needs of a thriving business as well.
Yeah.
So how do we test those two things? Either being permanent or say a 12-month temporary.
Yeah, give me a second. So just to say, I will let you just come in briefly. Generally, you wouldn't do so if it's just and there's been a lot of discussion, so I'll let you say what you want to say quickly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to obviously clarify something. If we only have a 6 months licence, we will have to stop all activity at Playwolf regarding bookings. It will be a detrimental effect to our business. I don't understand what's actually going on here. We have been operating for 9 years at Playworld, as we have been. This temporary licence is not going to make no effect. Like Mr. Chapman says, we work well with the Environment and Health. We have a drafted noise management action report, what we've already started doing. We've had numerous parties since we've known that we've unlawfully been using the hours. We're not trying to play no games. We're a business, we employ 30 people. If we don't have this permanent licence, how we expect to take any bookings, any birthday party bookings, any Christmas parties, I don't understand how we're going to do this. Yes, Teresa is fantastically right. We have to apply after 6 months, which could take another 6 months, another cost, another stress. I don't understand what's going on here. We're a local business.
I think, appreciate what you said. So, just to summarise, so we've obviously had somebody. 1 second. We've had a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation, which is the 6 months. I think to your point, Councillor Marchington, the question is, does anybody else would like to put forward a different approach to that? Because I think there is probably a merit in the terms of the way that we approach any different options.
Could you use your microphone?
Sorry, would it work in the sense I'd put a counter proposal down, that'd get voted, and then it'd go back to the original proposal? Is that how this would work?
If you want to make a proposal that it's a permanent or then please do.
I think it's right.
So just so you're clear, we've got a motion on the table. That's the first substantive motion, and that's what we would vote on first.
Okay.
Obviously, you can put forward a second proposal, and if it's seconded, we can then go to that only if the first proposal.
Do I have to wait until the first proposal is done? Okay.
Okay. But is that the case because couldn't someone just withdraw their motion?
That's entirely up to Councillor Green.
I'd like to just see what, if anybody else wants to put forward another motion, and then at least we know what the view is on the committee.
I would second the motion.
You can't do it until this motion has been
Oh, see. Well, you can do.
Members, are you saying that you would be looking to put forward a motion that
it's everyone's right to vote, and I think yes, I would put down the motion for a permanent.
And I would second it.
Okay. So members, I suppose what I'm asking is, I think the point that Councillor Marchington is making is that we don't want all the motions to fall because because people are debating. So what I think we're asking is, because if the colleagues were willing to put forward a motion, if that be permanent, would you be willing to withdraw your motion currently so that then that can be considered first and then move to your... Yep. Go on, Councillor Davis.
I'm really confused now. There was a motion proposed, seconded. I don't understand why
we will vote unless that's withdrawn. We will vote.
Okay, right. We'll just move to that motion then. But
I think that's the. I understand where you're coming from, but
that's what they're not willing to. Let's move to the motion as put forward by Councillor.
Right. So this is.
I think we've debated it enough now, so we'll go to the motion that's been put forward. I think that's very clear. So Councillor Greaves has put forward the motion that we, and seconded by Councillor Hawkins, that we go for the officer recommendation, 6 months.
That's right. Yeah. So we've got the motion is put forward by Councillor Greaves, seconded by Councillor Hawkins, to go forward with the approval as per the submitted report, which is a 6 month temporary licence. Yeah. So that's what we're voting on.
So, sorry, just to confirm, I think the movement also included that additional condition for the fire
correct.
Escape door as well. Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, that's subject to the installation of the improved fire door.
Yeah.
We'll move this. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we're all clear in terms of what we're voting for here?
Yeah.
Good. Right, so we'll start then with Councillor McGuinn.
So on the 6 month one, I have to vote against that.
Okay. Councillor Firth. Can you use your microphone and confirm, please?
I'm same as Bernard.
Okay, so that's a no. Councillor McGrath.
Against.
Councillor Marchington.
Against.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Abstain.
Councillor Greaves. For. Councillor Davis.
For.
1 second. I've lost you. Got you. Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
Against.
Councillor Homewood.
Against.
Okay. Right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 have voted against, 3 voted for, so that motion has fallen. And we've now got a second motion, which was a permanent with the fire-proof fire door, which was put forward by Councillor McGrath and seconded by Councillor McGuinn. So we'll go for that one. So Councillor McGuinn.
For.
Councillor Firth. For. Councillor McGrath.
For.
Councillor Marchington.
For.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Against.
Councillor Greaves.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Hawkins.
For, yeah.
Sorry, for. Yep. Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for, 3 against. So the application has been approved on a permanent basis, including the installation of that improved fire door.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, members. I think we can close the meeting. Sorry, that got a bit confusing.
Okay.